Last month, Volodymyr Zelensky, president of Ukraine, announced to no small fanfare that he was going to win the war and that he, in fact, had a victory plan, was the exact phrase that he used, and that very soon he would be revealing it to President Joe Biden, because he said in one of the clips we've shown that he needs the United States in order to provide some material, which he would not specify, but he needs that in order to win. But he now has a plan. Well, yesterday, he gave part of that plan to NBC News and to therefore to us publicly, where he's laying out exactly what happened. And so we're going to break that down today with the none other than the inestimable Larry Johnson, former CIA officer, author at Sonar21.com. And of course, you see, I'm trying to match his clothing prowess, but obviously I'm not succeeding very well.
Oh,
but,
I was going to say, I'm upset. You got a better looking shirt than I do, man.
I can't ever match the beard, though. I won't embarrass myself by even trying, but I'm at least trying to get online there. So
see, that's because your face is worth looking at. They told me when I used to be on TV, they said I had a face made for radio. Okay.
Oh man, that's just not right. Oh boy. All right. Well, we got to find something to laugh about, because the stuff I'm about to show you is not really laugh worthy. But it's out there and people need to know the truth. And that's what we're all about here, doing a deep dive into what Zelensky told NBC News. And actually, I want to start off with the Wall Street Journal, also from yesterday, because there's something really interesting that was put out. The title of the piece was Ukraine the underdog takes a risk. And it's really odd, because it starts out saying something that we could have said on our show here. In fact, let me just read it because it's really important. They're talking about the Kursk incursion, what the Ukraine side has done up into Kursk. And they say at about 500 square miles, it is roughly the size of Los Angeles. It is only about 1% of more than 40,000 square miles of Ukrainian territory occupied by Russia, and 0.0076%, or less than 1/10,000th of the 6.6 million square miles of the Russian Federation. In Ukrainian occupied Russia, there are no important cities or transit routes, no mines, important factories, or power plants. From a purely military perspective, the area is insignificant. The loss of it doesn't keep Mr. Putin from waging war, nor does its occupation afford Ukraine resources or a strategic position that will help it win. Even so, they conclude, it matters. And then the article goes on to talk about why they should continue to try. And Larry, I just got to ask you, with those two paragraphs open and up there, that should render anything else in the article stupid and say, oh, you know what, forget everything we were about to write, because these things right here prove that this was a foolish thing to do. And that doesn't even talk about the cost of sending those troops in there, keeping them up, and its impact on the Eastern Front. So what do you think about the Wall Street Journal, one of the alleged, major media outlets in the United States?
It's a propaganda outfit, pure and simple. And not even doing objective analysis. The video elements that are out there, where you can see the vehicles that litter just one highway in Kursk. It looks like a mega junkyard. APCs, tanks, about every kind of armored vehicle you could imagine, combat vehicle, is blown up and destroyed. It's just wreckage on the side of the road. And it'd be one thing if Ukraine had, sitting on a giant inventory of this, but they're not. Nor is the United States got warehouses just overflowing with new equipment it can send. They're coming up short. And so by diverting themselves into this PR stunt, they have actually dramatically increased the number of casualties per day that Ukrainians are suffering. And it was even the Washington Post the other day put up a video of the flags in this one cemetery. So I was quickly counting, both rows and columns, how there were at least 600 new graves in Kharkiv alone. So this is creating an incredible carnage for Ukraine that they're not going to be able to recover from.
Well, and it looks like Gary's showing that road of death you were talking about
Yeah.
there. Reminds me actually of the Desert Storm, that road of death when people trying to get out of Kuwait City, I think, the Iraqi army. Not quite that dense, but, just as impactful on the big issue here. But let's take a look at that. So before I get into showing you what Zelensky has said was his plan and how he's going to turn all of that into a victory. Take a look or tell me a little bit about, from a military perspective, what they have gained by having this incursion in there and what is the cost to the Russian side.
Yeah, what the Ukrainians have gained is more casualties. They've extended their lines of communication, so they have to travel farther to try to resupply. They've stretched themselves out so that they're no longer able to concentrate in one area, and they've basically made it possible for the Russians to start launching large-scale attacks across a broad part of the front. And that it sort of reminds me about what the Iranians thought when we invaded Iraq in 2003 and overthrew the government of Saddam, because Saddam had been a real thorn in the side of Iran. And the Iranians are watching us going, hey, Allah be praised. The Americans are helping us out. They're getting rid of the guy that was our problem. And so by the same token, the Russians are watching this invasion into Kursk. They're watching the Ukrainians take their best units, shuffle them up there where they're being killed in numbers greater than what they were losing on the Donetsk front. And by having fewer troops there in Donetsk, the Russians are now advancing as much as 5 to 10 kilometers a day. Remember, it was 6 months ago they were lucky to get a kilometer a week.
Yeah, right.
So now it's
actually I'm gonna show this map here to demonstrate some of what you're talking about. First of all, up here in the Kursk area, you can see all the blue area here is where the Ukraine side is. These red and blue symbols basically show where conflict or bombs have been dropped, etc. So, but the key issue here is you see the pink area, and then all this up here is Russian territory and where Russian troops are, and then this light blue area is where the Ukraine troops are.
Yeah.
And so it hasn't moved much at all since about the 16th of August. 16th and 20th of August or so. It's been kind of static, but they still have to. Let me pull back a little bit more. You see, Ukraine has to now divert resources up some of these main roads here go into here. At the same time, they're also still having to supply all the folks that are in the north of the Kyiv area, and that's gonna come into play just a second here. In fact, on the first Zelensky quote, when he mentions in a minute the buffer zone that Putin had claimed to set up. Putin set up a buffer zone here initially, at least that was his claim, so that the Ukraine side would not be able to hit the German city Belgorod in this area up here. That was his claim there. But then now back to your issue there about the resources. So now then in the northern Kupiansk area, Russia's putting more pressure in. Apparently some of the Ukraine forces have been withdrawn from here to go up to the Kursk area. That's been taken advantage of. Of course, we have the Pokrovsk area here. That's continuing to expand. As we've also been talking about, there's a large formation of Ukrainian troops here that are at risk of being encircled, or they have to withdraw quickly. And literally, you can just go all the way down the line. So you see everywhere that you're talking about, everything is going against the Ukraine side. And all this has served to do so far is to hasten the loss in the east. That's an objective view of what's going on the battlefield here. But now we're about to see something that's, well, not objective. But so before I get on there, I wonder if you can make any more comments about the overall operational situation on the battlefield.
Yeah, Kursk is like New Guinea during World War II out in the Pacific. Do you realize that the Americans were fighting on New Guinea from, like January, February of 1942, shortly after Pearl Harbor, until the very end of the war? That was the one island that they never took. My point is, just having guys in a particular area of territory and occupying a little town or two and being able to fire off some shots, that doesn't mean anything in the ultimate strategy of winning the war. All it is it's a nuisance element at best. PR damage for Russia, well, maybe, but it certainly seemed to have motivated a lot of Russians to go sign up in the military. What this really highlights is, and I wrote this the other day, to paraphrase James Carville's slogan for Clinton in 1992 election, where it's the economy, stupid. Hey, it's the training, stupid. And the point is, Ukraine does not have enough trained troops. They don't have a system for training. They don't have a pipeline for training. And without trained forces, they're going to keep experiencing casualties and losses.
That's such a an important point to just talk about here, because that's really a little bit off the maps and off the grids and off the video that people show, but it is profoundly important. I can personally attest to both personally seeing both the pro and the con side of what trained troops and untrained troops or inadequately trained troops can do in combat operations. So I'm glad you brought that up. But now let's get to the other view from Kyiv, from Volodymyr Zelensky. So now the first question here he's going to be talking about, we pick it up in progress. He was just asked about this Kursk offensive and how is that playing out? Here's what he said.
Було розуміння від наших розвідок, що Росія планує робити цю буферну зону. І ми це зрозуміли, що вони не зупиняться. І тоді ми зрозуміли, що нам потрібно відповідно провести операцію, щоб буферну зону робили не вони в нас, а ми.
Okay, so conceptually, if the enemy, and he's talking about that area north of Kharkiv that I just showed you, that's where Russia was trying to set up a buffer zone, though in practice it wasn't much of a buffer zone. It was only about 5 or 6 kilometers, and it never expanded, nor did it widen out from its original. It did serve as being a magnet for Ukraine troops to continue flooding in there, so it had some value in there. It wasn't much of a buffer zone, as Belgorod still is hit even recently. But okay, so that's one thing. You don't like that. So I want to make one that the Russian side has to worry about. So again, in isolation, not a crazy idea if you want to do that to the enemy. But the issue is, do you have the resources? Do you have the manpower to do that in? And how do you see that part?
Yeah, well, this is in boxing terms, this is called leading with your chin. Jut that chin out there and have him punch you right in the face. That usually leads to a knockout. Which is exactly what Ukraine has done to itself. If you proceed from the assumption that, which they did, that the Russians are weak, the Russians are tired, and the Russians have limited resources, yeah, you could justify that. Yeah, let's go ahead and give this a shot. This will really stress out the Russians. But every single one of those assumptions was wrong. The Russians have grown their army in the last 2.5 years from 750,000 active duty to over 1.4 million. So they've basically doubled the size of their army. These guys are trained. They're in for a minimum 6 to 8 month training periods. So when they come out of that training, their advanced individual training, and are integrated within units, they're not having to run crazily all over the map trying to figure out where they need to fill in the gaps. The Russian general staff, the Stavka, they're very excellent military planners. They have an integrated command system, something that we do not have in the West, in the United States. And so they're able to allocate those resources. They had already pre-positioned troops up in Belarus and up in that region. So it wasn't like they didn't have to pull them out of the Donbass, which was the theory that the Ukrainians were going on. And you've got to wonder, did they come up with that on their own, or did they have help from NATO? Because if NATO was involved with that, it's a level of incompetence. I guess it means that they got General Petraeus back in making decisions, okay? Because that's the kind of stupid decision you'd see that guy make.
Well, listen, Larry, I mean, that harkens back to the fall, late spring and early summer of 2023, when, according to many NATO officials that were interviewed by the Washington Post, New York Times et al., they said that they thought that the Ukraine side at least had an outside shot at going to the Azov coast. And as you and I have talked about, there was never any chance that was going to happen for very practical, fundamental, identifiable reasons. It wasn't, well, they're better than the other side. You could point on a map and show why they weren't going to succeed. And yet the NATO people actually said they believed it was possible. And David Petraeus, by the way, who we have used a clip in the past on him, saying exactly that on May 29th, I think. So 4 or 5 days before the thing started, he infamously said, yeah, the Russians would crack and probably crumble, but well, it didn't work out. That's still happening. We got a real big problem.
Yeah, Gary needs to put together that highlight reel of both Hodges, Petraeus, Jack Keane, and any of those other clowns, all their bold predictions about the counteroffensive last year, and then what actually happened. You know, I've been wrong. I've made mistakes, but at least I'll come out and admit it. I mean, good God, these people don't ever admit their errors. That's what's so galling, that they continue to not be embarrassed by their stupidity.
Well, what's really galling is the fact that even after they have failed like this, people will keep listening to them. But anyway, I digress. Let's move on to the next one here. So now then, Zelensky was asked specifically about his victory plan and how Kursk rolls into it. Here's what he said.
Те, що ми робимо, це частина плану перемоги. Чому я вам сказав, що Курщина – це крок іншої операції, більш великою. Я хотів показати план перемоги президенту Байдену. Але я хотів його показати після того, як у нас буде успіх на Курщині. І тому я до цього це не робив. І тому я йому обов'язково це.
So I didn't tell him before, but I'm going to do it now because this all is part of the master plan. I mean, it kind of reminds me of a comedy show, except of course the consequences are profound and fatal for so very many people here. But I just don't understand, how you can say a victory plan. But by the way, that word is going to be important for a couple of thoughts we're going to show here in a minute, because he said there he has a victory plan, i.e. to win. That's the normal definition of victory as far as I know. But he's going to change that in a minute. But talk a little bit about what he said right there and what your impressions are based on what we have seen now since about the month since this operation started.
I think he's using a word that he doesn't know what it means. He keeps saying victory with, please define it. It's like that scene from the movie Princess Bride where William Shawn kept saying, inconceivable. And finally someone says, I don't think you know what that word means. Yeah, that's what he's doing with victory. Well, if victory means that you lose more than 50% of your attacking force, 70% of your armor and vehicles, if that's victory, good Lord, what does defeat look like? So, and you're not taking territory, you're not advancing towards your original objective, because initially they were told that they were going to capture Kurchatov, the nuclear power plant that is just to the west of Kursk, the capital. That didn't happen. They got bogged down. And so it's not like they have dug entrenchments and that they have connected lines between all these different little villages that they occupy. They're more like U.S. cavalry in Indian country, Fort Apache here and there. But with the downside, they don't have a reliable means of being resupplied. It's not like the trucks can make the thunder run up those roads that are already littered with smoking vehicles. They don't have a fixed wing aircraft to drop in anything. In fact, just yesterday, I was one of the Ukrainian, it was a Su-29, tried to do an attack on Russian ground troops in Kursk and got shot down. So with because the Russian units, they operate with air defense systems embedded in their units. I mean, these guys aren't playing, and that's Zelensky's problem here. He thinks it's all about PR and looks.
Well, and what he also thinks it is now we're going to get into the first part of two separate things where he changes definitions of words, which just only goes to underscore how much of a problem this really is here. In this clip right here, he's going to talk about what his actual goal is. Now, when he says this, think of the goal in terms of the victory plan. Roll the tape.
У нього попереду лише ціль продовжувати війну. Армія не така міцна у нього. А він всіх що це не операція, не якесь там СВО, як він говорить. Це реальна війна. І всі свої бойові частини, всі свої сили він кинув в Україну. Це повномасштабна війна. Це також ця операція довела.
Is that true? Has he proved that? Because it looks to me like that. Number one, to you suggested a second ago that he underestimated and thinks that the Russians were weak. You said you'd have to believe that to do that. Now he basically validates that by saying that they're not as strong as what they want. Their whole army is in Ukraine. I don't think that's correct. In fact, let's start on that point there. Is the entire Russian army in Ukraine?
No. Probably only about a third of it. They've got a significant number that are out east over on towards the Pacific side. They've got the training areas. This is one of the advantages Russia has always had. It served them well in World War II as well. That, they got their rear ends handed to them in the first year of that war with the Nazis. But they had bases that were located east of the Ural Mountains. They had enough population that they could recruit, bring them in, get them trained up without them having to worry about being bombed, strafed, or overrun. Well, Russia still has that advantage. Ukraine doesn't. And we saw just yesterday with the attack in Poltava, where they gathered a group of electronic warfare students. Hey, we're going to teach you how to do all this jazzy stuff you're going to do to prevent you getting hit with a drone. And boom, they got clobbered with a couple of missiles. I don't know if they were Iskanders or which variety. The Russians got so much to choose from, but you kill and wound upwards of 400 people. So those are significant casualties, including some NATO personnel. And so Zelensky, it'd be one thing if you're saying, we are stopping cold these Russian missile strikes. Well, that's not happening. We are forcing them to give up territory in Donetsk. That's not happening. It's just the opposite. So happy talk, delusional talk. He's not the first guy to do this. We had Baghdad Bob in Iraq. There are no U.S. tanks in Baghdad. And I think I saw you in the back waving as you're driving down the street.
You saw that? Oh, man. So I want to zero back on something you said there, because earlier in this episode, you were talking about the absence of a training system on the Ukraine side. Does the Russian side have a training system?
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. In fact, this is again highlights one of the other problems. That thing you wore this thing in the military, I believe it was called a uniform. Now, it's not just something you wear, uniform training standards. So whether you were at Fort Hood or Fort Bragg or whatever base or Fort Bliss, that if you were going through, let's say, armored training, and I know they don't do it at Fort Bragg, but just making that up.
They do it Bliss though.
Yeah, they'll do it Bliss. But you go through the same. You got the standards that are uniform. The Russians have that. The Ukrainians don't, because the troops that are going through some training is usually being done in Poland or Romania, Germany, the United Kingdom, places outside. And I guarantee you, when you go to the Brits and go to the Poles, you're not getting uniform training. You're getting British flavor and Polish flavor. And I'll just give you a very, very simple example. In the United States, when we train soldiers with pistols to reload their semi-automatic pistol, the way you do it is you take sort of the rounded end, hold it with your index finger, and then that slides up. The flat end is on the back. That's how we do it. The Brits, Special Air Service, they do it exactly the opposite. Now, I'm not arguing that one's better than the other. My point is, there are two ways that you could do it, two different ways of training. But the problem is, if you don't get uniform training, then if you got one group of guys that have been trained in Poland and one group that have been trained in the UK, and all of a sudden they're having to operate together on the battlefield, and they won't be on the same page. It'll be like one's playing jazz music and one's playing classical music.
Yeah,
And
that was one of the biggest shortcomings and failures of the 2023 offensive by the Ukraine side, was because they didn't have uniform standards, they didn't have uniform levels of training, and then just a crazy mishmax of all different kinds of equipment,
yeah,
ammunition, maintenance gear, spare parts, just every disaster you can imagine, which was known ahead of time, but somehow we thought magically those things weren't going to manifest themselves, and they did.
yeah,
One of the other things that he said in that part is that that Russia is getting weaker; they're not getting stronger. Uh,
yeah,
Russia continues to evolve, not just in the manpower, but also in the technical phase. And there, I saw a report, I guess last month, that said that in 2023, the Russian electronic warfare was taken down somewhere around 60% of the Ukrainian drones. So only 40% were getting through. That has apparently, at least according to this report, down to 10% now, because Russia continues to expand its capacity. And they iterate and they train, they resource, they try new things, etc. And so it's shrinking that capability. Simultaneous to that, I've also seen just recently one Russian drone that was running around with a bucket of thermite
yeah.
coming out.
That wasn't something else. Good. It was like,
Raining down. It was terrifying, because I know what thermite is and what it can do to those underneath it. It was just terrifying to see. I've also seen reports of small numbers so far of Russian drones on a wire that's very similar to our TOW anti-tank missile, that's wire guided, i.e., it's not subject to enemy electronic warfare. Now, I don't know if they have those in very big quantities yet, but if they do, that could be profound, because, at least again, according to what I've read, some of the versions can go up to 10 kilometers. I mean, it's a huge capability. Can you talk a little bit about what these advances may mean on the battlefield?
well, yeah. I mean, this just shows that how dynamic the combat environment is. Particularly that thermite. That thing looked like a dragon out of Game of Thrones. Where it was blowing fire down on the ground. It was unbelievable. And then the fiber optic drones just reflects that the Russians are not sitting there static, and neither have the Ukrainians. I mean, for the Ukrainians have had the backing of NATO and have been trying to upgrade their drone capability. But when the Russians now introduce that fiber optic cable drone, it's impervious to the electronic warfare. And you could always, when you watch some of the drone footage, you can tell where the electronic warfare drones are and where the ones with the fiber optic. Because as the electronic warfare, the drones that are being hit with EW are coming in, start getting blurry and fuzzy, and get a lot of negative feed coming back. Whereas the ones with fiber optic, clear up into the end, man. You can read the license plates on these things. So the Russians have always been very good at making battlefield adaptations. The guy that is now basically their minister of defense that replaced Shoigu, he's an economic taskmaster, and he's making sure that the entire economy is humming along and working to give these people what they need in the field to win. And look, you're not hearing Russia saying, "Oh my God, we can't build any more Patriots. We can't build those Patriots fast enough." And hey, you want some more attack them? Sorry, our inventory's low. That's what we're saying, and it's not just you; it's the United States. We have sold our industrial capability overseas, a lot of it to China, and now we're sort of surprised that we can't produce this stuff.
Yeah, and it's not anything we can ramp up really quick.
Right.
The last thing about that previous clip that I do want to talk on, because it's going to be echoed and expanded in the next one, is he said, "My only goal is to continue the war." Okay, continue the war doesn't equal victory. That's where we get back into definitions.
Right.
If his goal is to continue war, I mean, there's a shot that you could do that, but there's also a shot that you're not going to be able to continue. And can you imagine, Larry? I'm going to ask you to go and go serve your country and fight and die to keep the fighting going. You don't even have the possibility of winning. It's just keep the fighting going. I mean, how eager are you going to be to go and to sacrifice your life, or to send your sons to go sacrifice their life to keep the war going?
As long as you can assure me that I can continue to work at Lockheed Martin or General Dynamics or Raytheon, and that I'm going to make more money as longer this thing goes on, I'll keep doing it. You've given me a financial incentive to fund, to keep the money flowing. Now, you're right. If you turn around and say, okay, hey, you're going to have to put your offspring out there in front, I go, oh, wait a second, or yourself. Then all of a sudden, the reality of war kicks in. And I had this discussion earlier today with Dimitri Simes, who is an American citizen, and his home was raided by the FBI 2 weeks ago in just an outrageous attack. But one of the key differences that's separating Russians from Americans is even today, the Russians still live with the memory of the Great Patriotic War, because between killed and wounded, about 36 out of every 100 Russians suffered. They were either killed or wounded. In the United States, the number killed and wounded in World War II in both theaters, Pacific and Atlantic, 1 out of 100. Actually, less than 1 out of 100. Now, that's why the Russians really aren't keen to get into a fight. Whereas on our side, my God, Korea, well, we only lost 50,000. Vietnam, 58,000. Iraq, what, 4,000? Man, that is chump change. Not for the parents and the family members who lose them.
A country that doesn't participate and they don't know anybody, it's not even chump change. It's no file found. It doesn't have any impact at all.
All we do is make money off of it. So that's where this disconnect comes, and that's what Zelensky said. Oh, keep it coming. The money keep flowing.
Yeah. And the money's not going to help if you're losing on the battlefield, because that's the implication of going after a political outcome that is militarily unattainable. So that's what we've seen up to this point. Now, here's one more. And again, definitions matter. Watch this one.
Do you think we are now on a path toward ending this war? Are you heading toward peace negotiations? Is holding this part of Russia, the Kursk Oblast, part of your way to end the war?
Я вважаю, що, дивіться, з нашого боку ми точно хочемо закінчення війни. Абсолютно. І план перемоги мій. Він направлений суто на те, щоб змусити Росію закінчити війну. Змусити їх зрозуміти, що це безглузде. Те, що вони натворили.
So a couple key things there. Number one is he said that when he was asked, is this leading to negotiated settlement? He's shaking his head. No, that's not what we're going to do. Then he takes ownership of it. He said, this is my victory plan. I'm not sure he's going to want ownership of that one. But then the last part there, he said, is the objective is to make Russia understand that this is nonsense and that they should stop fighting. I mean, that's not a military task. To make someone understand something, that's an aspiration that, gosh, I hope that they would just understand. As you talked about a minute ago, and I showed you on that map, they're doing nothing but methodically moving through your troops and picking up the pace. And in light of that, you want to go divert your troops, some of them into the Kursk salient. At the same time, you're now thinning out your line here and accelerating the Russian movement. And you actually say your plan is to keep fighting or make the other side understand that they can't win. Where is there any possibility of that?
Yeah, not at all. Look, if you were a Martian and just landed on planet Earth and didn't know much about the last 2.5 years, and you were listening to Zelensky say this, you'd think, man, I know he's a comedian and he must be auditioning some new material, but it's really not funny. He needs to go back to work on it. I mean, it is so divorced from reality. The force Russia, you say that as over the past 4 days, Russia, they've launched 4 successive days of massive missile, rocket strikes, drone strikes throughout Ukraine. And they're not letting up on the battlefield. They're capturing 2 to 3 new villages, towns, cities every day. That was not the case a year ago, because that was when you had a war of attrition. It looks like now Russia has turned away from the strict war of attrition, that they've weakened the Ukrainians to the point that now they can do something that what we might come close to calling big arrow offensives, but they're able to commit more troops because the Ukrainians have less ability to fire, to use artillery, in part because they don't have the shells, in part because they don't have the actual artillery pieces to employ. I mean, it's just it's not getting better on any front.
Now
That's
tell
the
me, is it
point.
simultaneous with this? What sense does it make? What rationale could you get behind to, at the same time you allegedly launched this victory plan, and after you have just started this incursion into enemy territory from the Ukraine's perspective, and then you fire your foreign minister and a whole slew of other people, you fire the chief of your Air Force? What signal does that send to the guys you're trying to ask to hold the line?
Get out while you can. They're like, hey, if this is the way the rats are going, let's follow them. Start running for the exits. Yeah, these are not the kinds of signs you give off when you've got a winning program. I mean, imagine that this was, the end of coming to the end of World War II. So yeah, Franklin Delano Roosevelt died. Harry Truman steps up. You didn't see George Marshall heading for the door and the Secretary of State Stimson going out. No, the team stayed together, and they said, hey, we're going for the victory. These guys, they're not even staying together as a team, and the Congress, their version of the Congress, the Rada, that's supposed to be behind them, is missing in action.
And it's one thing if you're talking about Zelensky, because we can sit here and parse out what he said, and we can rationally say there's no substance behind this. There's no fundamental reason why you would think that there's a shot here. There's no graphic reason on the ground, and there are countervailing arguments physically present on the battlefield and trends that show that this isn't going to have any chance of success. It's one thing if you can say it's him because his life is on the line, and desperate people sometimes make really foolish decisions, and maybe you can't think straight. It's a little harder though from the American side here. Now, you mentioned David Petraeus just a second ago, but here he was just a few days ago talking something like Zelensky. Listen to this.
Let's give them all that they can possibly use and then enable them to achieve everything that they possibly can, change the dynamics of this war so that there can be some kind of meaningful negotiations, and get the guns to go silent, provide rock solid security guarantees for Ukraine, get them into the EU, and then allow Ukraine to flourish as continued independent democracy that embraces free market capitalism. And I, for one, don't believe that we can't do all of this and Indo-Pacific and help in the Middle East. I believe we have to.
Okay, just a quick review of the bidding. So we want to force Russia to have negotiations, even though they're on the winning side. Right. We have to give them everything they need, even though we've done that for 2.5 years and it hasn't changed anything on the battlefield. We need the guns to go silent, so then we can have a negotiated settlement at terms beneficial to Kyiv. We need to get them in the EU. We need to help them to flourish. That's an interesting one. And by the way, we'll be able to do this and give them everything they need, while we'll also give Israel everything it needs in the Mideast and give Taiwan everything they need in the Indo-Pacific. And I guess we'll still be able to do everything that we're supposed to everywhere else around the world. My God, that's worse delusion than Zelensky.
Yeah, and that it goes a long ways to reflect upon sort of the quality of military leadership in the United States, not just military intelligence, because, Petraeus did his damage at the CIA as well.
It's incredible to think that this man was the director of the CIA, not to mention a 4-star general in charge of a military operation that lost.
Well, yeah, you at least ought to be able to add and subtract, okay? And, or at least sniff out the bovine excrement when it's being spread all over you, because to take at face value whatever the Ukrainians tell us about how much the Russians have suffered losses doesn't mean you have to surrender your own judgment, that you can actually say, hey, let's look to see if there is any corroborating evidence to support that point of view. And you rapidly find out by looking at social media, nope, no, they're there. But with Ukraine, video after video after video of fluttering flags over freshly dug graves and hundreds of cemeteries throughout Ukraine, and those have been evident since the summer of 2022, and so for Petraeus to be this again this clueless, ignoring the fact that the Houthis have beat us in the Red Sea. I mean, they defeated the U.S. Navy. The U.S. Navy pulled out without accomplishing its mission. We just didn't declare it as a defeat. And the notion that we're going to then also confront China. Are these people? Please stop. It's like an alcoholic that's out of control. Got to get the bottle out of their hand. Got to get them dried out. We've got to stop thinking that war is our only option, which is what they're saying. That we need to fight them in Ukraine. We need to fight Iran. We need to fight Hamas. We need to fight Hezbollah. We need to fight the Chinese. And it would be one thing if we were good fighters, but we haven't exactly distinguished ourselves and teeing off against a peer and handling it well.
I think, Larry, one of the really disturbing failures and the lack of capacity on our part right now of our senior leaders, and this goes across the board. I mean, of course, I could add a bunch of the generals, or I could talk about John Bolton or Lindsey Graham or whatever. but the people that are at the top, whether they're smart or not, we can debate. But the fact that they're at the top and they are the elite is the real problem, because they do not have the capacity to understand what a militarily attainable objective is and what one's not. And this goes back to George Bush. This goes back to Barack Obama. Donald Trump was similar. At least the one thing he did with the ISIS was give them a militarily attainable objective, but then didn't take them out. So that's another problem there. But then these other guys we're talking about now, the current president, Biden, and now these guys here, Petraeus and stuff. I mean, they don't know what militarily attainable objective even means, much less how to actually count, as you said. And I just it boggles my mind how that can be.
Well, look what happened in your own case, where you spoke up to blow the whistle on what was coming out of Afghanistan, the lies, the misrepresentations, and you didn't have a single senior general officer with the integrity or the backbone to stand up and go, Danny's right, and this is they all kept silent, because they wanted to get that good payout when they leave. They didn't want to have to be reduced in rank. They didn't want to be seen as a troublemaker out in the corporate world, because by God, we can't have any independent thinkers out there. They're going to say what's right and call bullshit on bullshit. Can't have that. That's dangerous. So that's what we've had all along. Whether it was the actions going into the first, leading us into the 2003 invasion of Iraq, or the failure to follow up in Afghanistan and to keep it confined, to really take out bin Laden. None of the generals back in the DC that were running operations at that time listened to the recommendations of the Delta Force commanders on the ground. That's what they needed, was the 75th Rangers as a blocking force. No, we can't have that, because we're planning to go to war a year from now in Iraq.
Yeah.
So you're an example of somebody who had the courage to stand up, speak up, and you paid a price for it. And that's one of the reasons guys like Petraeus got where he's got to be.
Yeah, they don't do that. And here's the thing, Larry, that really disturbs me and why this troubles me so much. One of the reasons why we even made this channel is because no one ever calls that stuff out. When Petraeus was being interviewed there, the interviewer didn't, say, hey, wait, just a second. How in the world do you think? No one ever does that.
Right.
H.R. McMaster is on his book tour right now, and he's just going on literally every network and just talk about all these things that Trump did wrong and all this other stuff. Nobody challenges him on any of that. His claims of, this is the truth. No one says, wait a minute, how was that the truth? Because HR was one of the ones that said he wanted to put, I think 40,000 more troops back into Afghanistan, and he wanted to stay there forever.
Yeah.
No embarrassment about that. No one ever challenges him, though. I didn't see a single interview where he was ever challenged on these kind of things. Petraeus is never challenged. You mentioned a minute ago, Jack Keane, never challenged on anything. So what is the American public to think when they hear these guys saying this? No one challenges them. They didn't serve, most people, they don't know. And so these things just keep on going until one day the truth is going to overcome the spin. And no matter what Petraeus says or McMaster or McKean or any of these people, we could find ourselves sucked into a war that we should never have fought and may not be able to win.
Yeah, it's that level of, I call it propaganda, because it is, I was 30 years ago when I was appearing on cable news shows like CNN's Crossfire. At least back then, there were opposing points of view that you could bring on air. In fact, they almost made it sure that you didn't have just the one voice, that you would actually have genuine differences. But right now, you can't find a single one of these cable news outlets or mainstream media or legacy media for the TV space where they're bringing on anybody like Doug McGregor or yourself, anybody with an opposing voice about it to talk realistically. It's all the cheerleader stuff. And when Americans are fed that kind of propaganda all the time, that's what they come to believe. Because they don't have any other reference point. So that's why what you do on your show is important, Judge Napolitano and others. At least you're putting the knowledge out there that if people want to know, they can find out, despite efforts to try to shut everybody down.
Yeah, and I'll tell you where I think that the first point of vulnerability is the Russia-Ukraine war, and here's specifically what I worry about, and I'd like your view on it. By having this detachment from reality, but with very much physical actions on the ground, i.e. invading into Russian territory, sending these missiles into Russian territory, ignoring all these calls like from Lavrov recently that, hey, if we get into a war with you, your oceans are not going to save you. Right. With Zelensky sending his troops out everywhere, making them weak everywhere, gives the possibility that I think that Russia is probably preparing a big aerial movement at some point. I think it would be almost crazy if they didn't, if they just kept on with this slow, methodical thing. I think at some point when it's just some level of weakness in one of these locations, they're going to bring a big sledgehammer to the fight. And if that breaks through and all of a sudden you have a collapse of a front somewhere, and we saw in France, 1940, what happens when part of an army collapses, the whole thing could just buckle like that. What is the United States going to do then when all this stuff that Petraeus, Zelensky, Keane, McMaster, all these people, all the things that they have said just is collapsed to the ground? Now then you got Biden with the choice. Does he acknowledge and accept the defeat of everything that we did for 2.5 years? It failed. And just say, all right, well, let's shore up our eastern flank in NATO to make sure this doesn't get any further. And, let's live to fight another day. Or do we do something really stupid and say, wait a minute, how about we send a bunch of NATO troops into Western Ukraine to make sure the whole thing doesn't fall? And now all of a sudden we could literally be in a major European war. I worry a lot about that.
Oh, no, it's a legitimate concern because right now it's not going to be Biden making any decision. He doesn't even know what day it is. They're just letting him hang out for a while, so he can continue to eat ice cream until his time's up. So that the real question comes down is that what are Austin and Sullivan and Blinken going to do? Because whatever they're going to do, I think that they're going to do the stupid thing. I think that they're going to, out of fear that appearing to, quote, surrender to the Russian victory would make them look weak for the election, that they're going to feel that they need to do something. And in doing something, I think it'll be a miscalculation, because it goes back to what I was saying earlier, that we have misinterpreted Russian patience and Russian caution for weakness and lack of resolve. And as anything but. And Lavrov just yesterday made that point about both sides of the, that the United States would be hit. That's essentially what he said. They're not making idle threats. And I don't know how much to overemphasize that they're not playing at this. It's not a game. They're dead serious. And our problem is we're not taking them seriously. And we are surrounded with, people who are small intellectually, very narrow-minded, very unimaginative. And while they have school credentials that say they're smart, they're not thinking analytically, they're not thinking strategically, and they're putting this country at risk.
Indeed, they are. Couldn't agree with you more. And it's a great way to wrap this up. Thanks for coming on, Larry. I always appreciate your view, even though the conclusions are sometimes really sobering and not exactly happy. But we're certainly grateful for you coming on, and invite everybody to, if you can't get enough Larry, always go to sonar21.com where you've got your podcast. I know you're on a bunch of other shows too. Spreading the truth out there. So we invite people to go and look on there. And thank you again for coming on.
Hey, Danny, it's always a pleasure. I'm honored. Thanks.
And we appreciate you guys too. Be sure and like and subscribe, folks, if you haven't. It really does help us spread this message. And believe me, I want to do everything in my power to make sure that this message of truth gets out there. Because, folks, if what we've described in this show happens, no one's going to be safe. And it'll be too late. If we get to that point and we cross over it, it's going to be too late. Help us get the word out. Spread this around to everybody that you know. Tag it on social media. Do whatever it takes. But let's get the truth out there, folks. I'm counting on you to do what you can as well.
And Danny, let's remind everybody that now you can hear our podcast for people that don't want to sit down and watch a YouTube video. Wherever you get your favorite podcasts at Spotify or Apple Tunes, we're out there now, so you can hear the podcast anytime.
Indeed. Well said. Thanks, Larry. Gary, appreciate that. All right. And thanks to you guys too. We really value you watching, and we're going to keep giving you the truth no matter what it is, because we are unintimidated and uncompromised to make sure you get it. Thanks. And we'll see you on the next episode of Daniel Davis Deep Dive.